that's 8 months. Feels more like 8 years sometimes, but it's a long time. I'm going to talk about my experiences, my students' experiences. But before I start, I'd like you just to put in the chat how long you've been teaching online. And of course, if you haven't been teaching online, which I think is unlikely, but you can put that in the chat as well. So just leave a comment and tell me how long you've been teaching online. Six months, also since March, since April, since March, since March. Okay, so it looks like we are very much in the same boat, all of us. So we're going to be talking about things which are very familiar. So now I'm going to share my screen with you, and I'm going to start off with a slideshow. Hope you can see that. So let's move into it. Yeah. Okay, so I've already told you a little bit about what lies ahead. That's me, by the way, on one of my holidays before the lockdown, looking out over the mountaintops, or perhaps it's not me, got too much hair for me, really. So, yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience when we went into lockdown and I was faced with teaching online. I'm sure it's familiar to a lot of you. I'm going to share with you some research on my students. So I've been doing some research using questionnaires and interviews. I'll share just a little bit of that with you. I'll have some thoughts about what works and what doesn't work, and some practical ideas, and I hope we'll have a bit of fun. This is a workshop, so we will be doing a few activities and playing a few games, and I'm also interested in your experiences and your ideas. So let's get into it. So my own experience was, yeah, a bit like this, the long dark tea time of the soul. So it took me quite a while to adjust. And at times I felt very, I felt I wasn't getting anywhere. I was talking to a screen, and it wasn't a very satisfactory experience. It took me a long time to get beyond that, but I did gradually get into this online teaching much more and started to enjoy it. And I'm going to sort of examine how that happened and why that happened. The title of this session was because I was immediately reminded of a book which you might know called Alone Together by Sherry Turkle, an American researcher. And this was published in 2011. And the main idea of Alone Together is that we're all using these social media tools, digital tools, which help us to communicate instantly, but actually we're very isolated because of them. It's an interesting argument and an interesting book, but I found that while I did experience isolation and at times I felt very as if I wasn't being able to connect, the situation was a little bit more nuanced, and that it was actually possible to make connections and to feel part of a group. So I'm interested in how that happened and why that happened. But first of all, let's have a look at some of my students' experience. So as I said, I gave them a questionnaire, and this questionnaire consisted of about 15 questions. This is question 3. So yeah, just write down some words, some adjectives to describe how you're feeling. This questionnaire I set up this semester, about 2 months into the semester, or maybe a little less than 2 months into the semester. So this was their second semester of mainly online teaching. Some of them had a bit of face-to-face at the beginning of the semester before we all went into online teaching completely. So these are some of the things they said: busy, hectic, precisely organized, because the second semester already was much better than the first semester. Isolated, disconnected, unsociable, sometimes disorganized, not always better though. Stressful, strange, alienated, lonely, hard, lazy, scattered, a lot, and challenging, draining, focused. And I think we can relate to some of those. I'm sure all of us can relate to some of those. Lazy is an interesting one because motivation is a problem. It's a problem for students, but I think it's also a problem for teachers, and you probably have found that as well. And the other thing which I think we can all realize is just how tiring it is teaching online. I had my last class 2 days ago, and yeah, I can relate to this. I feel drained, quite substantially drained, but I also feel some positive things as well. Question 7. What personal problems have you experienced during this semester? I think this was very illuminating, and it's important, I think, for us to consider what is happening on the other end of the screen. We have our own problems, of course, but students do have considerable problems as well. Depression, being unmotivated, again, the problem of motivation when you're not actually in a classroom, sharing a space with other students and teachers. Depression, isolation, lack of face-to-face communication, tension at home due to the stress caused by the pandemic. I think this is another very important thing we have to take into account. It's not just our interaction with our students. Our students are having to deal with a lot more, as are we as well. I really miss the social aspect of going to school. I haven't made any new friends this semester, and it's terrible. I really love meeting new people at the uni, and now I'm kind of lonely. So again, there's this problem, which kind of, as I said, this reminds me of the Shelley Turkle argument, alone together. And it does relate to that. But as I said, I think things can be done about that. And just to show you, lack of personal teaching and studying, there's another one, but I don't think it has to be this way. And the other thing I want to show you is, as I said, I had my last course, my last lesson 2 days ago. This week, we've been doing, the final meetings, and we've been closing the courses. And one of the things I've done with my groups is this. I've got them to use Mentimeter to make word clouds, to sort of allow us to say how we feel at the end of the course. Now, this one may not look very positive. Where are you now? But the reason for that is that this course was a long teaching support course. So basically, all of the students were themselves teachers. And I think it shows very well how teachers are probably feeling right now. You can see the biggest terms in the middle: exhausted, stress, unrelieved, overwhelmed, in between, finish line, getting to the finish line at the end of the tunnel, and so on. But even here, there are some positive things as well. Christmas spirit, getting in the mood for Christmas, international workplace, a place where I'm proud. So these teachers have been through a lot. They also have to, they have to do their final exams. So there's a lot on their plate. But even there, they are also experiencing some good things. Now, if I share with you a word cloud from one of my language development courses, I think you'll see this one's predominantly positive. So this was for a course which I think really worked, despite the fact that we never met each other entirely. Our interaction was entirely online. And yet, I mean, look at the feedback for this course. So I think it is possible to make connections and to have a very, very rich experience. You can see some clues as to how that happened in the feedback. Flexibility is a very important thing. And I think, we need to, part of that is anticipating and caring about what our students are going through, as I already mentioned. Also, doing things together and getting our students to do as much as possible. So I think that is testament to a positive online experience. And as I said, I think this is more than possible for us to do together. How? Well, that's something I'm going to consider in a minute. But first of all, I would like you to share some of your experiences in this 8 months or whatever it is that you've been teaching online. So I'm going to ask you, this is the work bit in the workshop. Velina is going to put you into groups. How many people have we got? So I guess
41. 41 people.
Right. I think maybe groups of 3 would be good. I can't do the maths.
So that's 13, I think. 14.
Right. Okay. And if you could give people 4 minutes to share their experiences, both good and bad, of online teaching in this period, then we'll come back and we'll find out a few things together in the chat.
Okay.
So I'll see you on the other side in a few minutes.
Okay, let's go. Just a sec. Can you repeat the time, please?
4 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, here. Thank
Okay, are we back? Am I still sharing my slideshow or not?
Oh, no, you have to do
No,
it.
I have to do that again.
Mhm.
Yeah, so, okay, so I hope these breakout rooms are great. I agree. Breakout rooms are good. But one of the things that came up in my conversation, I don't know if it came up in yours, was just the difficulty of teachers learning how to use things like breakout rooms, things like the new technology. So that takes a little bit of getting used to. And every time you have to use something new, it's a little bit worrying. And yeah, so this adds for teachers to the anxiety, but the more you do it, the better you get. So I think that's important to remember as well. And one thing I was saying at the end there was that we can't just assume that our students know all this stuff, and we don't, because it's not quite that simple. Again, things are more nuanced. Okay, I'm going to move on. But if you want to share your experiences, please do so in the chat while I'm moving on to the next point. If I can indeed move on to the, yes, I can. Yeah, so I just want to start sharing a few simple ideas. And this also relates to technology, because what I'm not going to do is give you lots of apps, because I think we've all been using apps, we all know apps. And I think you can learn that kind of stuff actually from your students. A lot of the things I use, I learn from my students anyway. I watch what they do and just copy them. And I don't think learning lots of apps is necessarily going to help you. It's what you do with them and how you handle them that matters. And you don't need a lot of apps actually to do good stuff online, which can help make a group. What you do need, I think, is ideas of how this works. And I think really what we're talking about here is group dynamics. This is the best book I know, incidentally, on group dynamics. There aren't too many books around. This book is very good. It's a theoretical book, but it's also full of practical experience. And it covers the essential ingredients of how to build a group which is together. And I think all the points which are discussed in this book about building good groups can be applied to online groups just as much as they can be applied to classroom groups. And I'm just going to look at really just one point, which is very important in building a group of people who are together and who accept each other. So here are a few things you can do to achieve that, that feeling of a group. One is routine, establishing a routine. So this might sound a bit odd when you're talking about an online group, but I think you can do that in an online group. For instance, in my groups, in the first few minutes, we just chat. So we don't go straight into whatever is the business of the day. We just chat. Usually I arrive a few minutes early, they arrive a few minutes early, and we just have a chat. So that's a kind of routine, but it's a good routine because it establishes us as people. It foregrounds people first. I think that's very important when you're working online, for obvious reasons we've already seen. Yeah, establishing group norms. So how we use cameras. Now, the use of cameras is very interesting. Some people use them, some people don't. Some teachers get very disturbed by learners who don't put the cameras on. So you have to work out what you want for yourself regarding cameras. I allow my students to choose what they want to do. But when they are doing stuff, which I get them to do as much as possible, I ask them to put their cameras on. So when they are the teacher, when they are delivering activities or presentations, I want them to put the camera on. And yeah, when they're doing stuff. So that's another thing I've found. Give as much responsibility to your learners as possible, because that has two effects. One is, it doesn't mean you're doing all the talking, you're doing everything. I don't think that really works. they get involved, they're doing stuff, but also they have an awareness raising experience of how difficult it is actually to do stuff online. And they learn a lot from each other. And this also helps in bringing the group together. Keeping in touch and being available between classes, I think, is very important as well. That helps with the feeling of a group and being connected. I use Facebook for that, but I think you can do it in lots of different ways. Group identity, giving yourself a name may sound silly, but I think it's very important, actually. I think it's even more important now that we're just virtual groups. So give the group a name. Being forgiving, that's another one I think which is very important. And that applies to both ourselves and our learners. We have to be flexible, much more flexible, and I think more forgiving as well. And being prepared to do things differently. So concentrating more on the process of what we're doing and worrying less about measuring the product. So that means, less testing for starters, and more about enjoying what we're doing and making sure what we're doing is productive. How does this look? Oh, actually, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stop sharing again, and we're going to do a few activities, very, very simple activities, not highfalutin activities with apps. We're just going to use, to start off with, we're going to use Zoom. So one of the things I like doing, and my students like doing, is playing around with backgrounds. So, sorry, I'm losing my voice. I'm teached out. What I want you to do is to think back to when you were little. Now, in my case, that's a long time ago, but I can still remember it. And I want you to put in a picture in your background of what it was that you wanted to do. What did you want to be when you were little? Okay, now you might need a minute or so to think about this. And if you can't think of anything, no problem. But if you can, go to Google Pictures, download a picture onto your computer, and then share it as your background. Of course, I've already done that. So it's going to be a bit easier for me. So I'll do that, and you can guess what it is that I want it to be when I was little. So where is it? There it is. Okay. So what do you think? What was it that I wanted to be? Any ideas? You can write it in the chat. Yes, I thought you were going to say I wanted to be a horse. I already am a horse, of course, if you know me. But yeah, I wanted to be a vet, but I couldn't actually be a vet because I was no good at maths or physics. So eventually, because I was quite good at English, I eventually ended up as a teacher by a long and winding road. Okay, so that's something. Oh, Tiana, I think you wanted to be an ice skater. Is that right? Yeah, okay. So you see how it works. Now, of course, with your students, if your students are 10 years old, you might not want to ask them that question. But it doesn't take a huge leap of the imagination to work out how you're going to do it with young students, with young pupils. You're going to ask them what they want to be, not what they want it to be, but what they want to be. So you can do very much the same thing. And you can use this for lots of things. Again, I don't need to tell you, but your favorite music or your favorite artists. So here we go. I love doing this, which is why I'm going to carry it on for a bit. So what's my favorite kind of music? What do you reckon? Any ideas? If you've ever seen the Blues Brothers, not jazz, no, yeah, that's right, country rock. We got both kinds of music here, country and Western. Yeah, and what about my favorite artist? So this is, it's been a bit slow, but I'm sure you'll recognize this as well. Anybody? He's a graffiti, yeah, Banksy, that's right, Banksy, yeah. And so on and so on. You can use the background in lots and lots of different ways. You can have virtual gallery tours, for instance. So there's a lot of potential in using backgrounds. One more thing before we move back to the slideshow very quickly. The name function is great. So if you've got the latest version of Zoom, you just give a right click, I think, yeah, and I think maybe you have to give a right click on your actual picture, and then click on rename, and you can put anything you like in the rename. So that has lots of potential. You can say, you know, how are you feeling today? Put it in your name. So you can say excited, for instance. And there we are, excited. But you can do, I mean, the potential of that, it's so simple, but lots and lots of potential for playing around with the name function. So there's a lot you can do without going anywhere, without doing anything. Okay, let's go back to the share screen. And okay. Oh, now I have to go forward to where we were, because now we're going to play a little game. Yeah. Yeah. We're going to play a little game, which takes a little bit of preparing, but not very much. This is called Mad Libs. And yeah, the first one is about a giraffe. So again, you don't need apps to do this. You just need a little bit of preparation. So the way this works, and this is a nice little simple language game, you find headlines from the day, and you miss out a word or a phrase from the headline, and you ask your students to put in a funny solution, a funny completion to the headline, and then you basically you enjoy what, I mean, you can set rules to it as well. You can get students to read them out, and they're not allowed to laugh, and anyone who laughs is out, things like that. But it can just be enjoyed as a pure language exercise. Any suggestions for what this could be? Giraffe named after first person two. Would anyone like to suggest something silly there? I can't actually see the chat at the moment. No. So you'll have to say if anyone's got any ideas. Why? Oh, maybe I can see the chat.
Yes, you can.
Clicked on it, but I still can't see it.
To eat leaves from the tree.
Uh-huh.
It's
That's a good one, yeah, to eat leaves on a tree. Any others? Well, the actual headline was the first person to get the COVID-19 jab, which is not particularly funny. Here's a nice one. Hundreds of exotic, and then you have to put a noun and a verb into the gap, in police raids. So you can see that's got a lot of potential. I mean, the first thing that leaps out of me after exotic is dancers. So what are you going to do with exotic dancers? Again, the original was somewhat less exciting, though still interesting. The original headline was exotic animals rescued in police raids. And the last one, for British to help protect fishing waters. So that, of course, is relating to Brexit. And yeah, I think you can think of lots of British things which could go in there, which could be quite amusing. This is a game which you can adapt, again, in lots of different ways. It's quite simple, doesn't take too much setting up. It's enjoyable, and it's encouraging. It's drawing your students to use their vocab and to use some grammar to do this. So I think process, again, we're not testing them, we're involving them in something enjoyable, we're involving them in using their proficiency and maybe extending their proficiency and learning from each other. And I think this is the sort of thing which can work very well in online teaching. Okay, we can also use the camera function very well. So you may know of a fishbowl activity. Fishbowl activity is in the classroom, is where it looks a bit like this. You've got a few students in the middle. You give them something to discuss, an interesting topic, like, I don't know, something to do with, I don't know, pop music or popular culture, or something to do with the school. Students shouldn't be asked to do any classes before 10 o'clock, something like that. something that your students are actually going to maybe be motivated, be engaged to talk about. And you have a few students discussing it in the middle, and the rest of the students around the outside listening. And usually there's a free chair, and if someone wants to come in, they can sit on the free chair, and one of the other students has to leave, and that person can say something. So this can work quite well in the class, but it can also work online if we just use the camera function. So we can do exactly the same thing with the camera function. So in gallery view, we can have the students who are discussing the topic in the middle with the cameras on, and all the other students with the cameras off. So we can do a lot of the things that we can do in a classroom differently online. I think that's another important thing for us to remember. This can be fun. It's involving lots of active language use, authentic language use. And provided we set it up right and we come up with interesting topics, or we ask the students, which is always a good idea, I think, for topics, I think this can work very well. We can do a lot of other things using the breakout rooms, possibly the best feature of Zoom, sorry. Although Teams now has breakout rooms as well, which I've yet to use. But yeah, Teams does now have breakout rooms. Hopefully they will work as well as Zoom, because we have to use Teams at university. My choice would be Zoom, but we have to use Teams. So in the breakout rooms, we can get students to do role plays. We can get them preparing debates. We can put them, in different breakout rooms to talk about different points of view in the debate, do balloon debates, all sorts of things that we can do. We can get them to prepare role plays and then come and perform them in the whole class, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of potential with breakout rooms. And as time is running on, I'm now going to ask you to go back to the breakout rooms, and I want you to share some of the things that you've done in your online classes that have worked for you. And we'll try and be able to share, give each other some some early Christmas presents by sharing some of the activities that we've done. Okay, so Velina, could you give us 3 minutes for this one?
For this one, 3 minutes, okay?
Yeah, and groups of 3 again, I think is good.
Groups of 3.
Mm-hmm. Thank
Okay,
you.
a sec. I need to add a room. Room 13. Okay. Just a second, I need to. Okay, so we've got groups of 3 again. Okay, so here we go.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Frank, unmute.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we're back and time is running out, as it always does in my workshops. I can't work that out. Why does time run out? So I will encourage you to put in your ideas, to share your ideas in chat, and people can look at them. And maybe we can share a few afterwards as well. I'm just going to change my background one last time. And I will share one last activity with you, which I forgot to talk about very quickly, very briefly. And that is zombie apocalypse, because I want to share this with you because I've got good feedback that other people have used it and said, yeah, the kids loved it. So zombie apocalypse is very simple, and it's a good example of another kind of activity which I think is good for bringing people together, because it involves looking at and sharing your surroundings. So zombie apocalypse is very simple. You have to choose an object within arm's reach, first of all. You don't tell your students what for. And for instance, I could say this pencil, which is on my desk. And once everyone's chosen an object and told us what it is, then they have to explain, they have to come up with a reason, or you can say you have to come up with more reasons if you're a bit of a masochist. At least one reason why this is going to help them survive in a zombie apocalypse. Now, a pencil's quite good because obviously you can use a pencil to stab a zombie in the eye. But if people choose, for instance, a pot plant or a cup of tea or a plush animal, then they're going to have to be a bit more imaginative for how this object is going to help them survive a zombie apocalypse. Yeah, 2 more minutes. Okay, cut to the chase. So back to where we were. Yeah, there we go. Just for a few final thoughts then. Come on, go big. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So final thoughts, which are not these, although this is a very good final thought if you're just about to have your head cut off, because this is from The Tale of Two Cities, but I'm not just about to have my head cut off. So this is actually one thing I'd like to leave you with, which is Kiss Myth. I claim patent on this one because I thought of it myself. Kiss Myth means keep it simple and make it fun. Okay. So I think that's a very, very good thing to keep in mind when you're working online. Simplicity and fun. Those are very important things to make sure your students enjoy the course and want more of it. A few more final thoughts very quickly. I think we need to think about the long-term effects of this experience on our education systems. Of course, initially, everyone found it difficult, but I think there are positive things that have come out of this, and these positive things might have a very positive feedback into our education systems, might actually drag them into the 21st century out of the 19th century, which, sometimes it feels like we're still in. So can it help us reform and improve? And I hope it can. And how might it affect how we handle the following things? Because I think it can and probably should help us rethink these things. One is homework, how we do homework, how we ask students to do homework. Students don't need to do homework alone anymore. They didn't need to do homework alone before. Homework can be a cooperative task, and it can be an online cooperative task. Testing, I think we really need to think very, very seriously about testing, and maybe this can help push us to think about that in a more structured and more productive way. And what we do in class when we get back to class as well. So I think we shouldn't go back to, just trying to go from where we were before. I think things need to be reset. So we need to think about how we use class time and what we do outside class. And maybe another thing is, what help can we get? So we need good technological help. And if we don't get it, we should demand it, I think. So these are things to think about. And a final quote to finish with. You probably recognize this, but I think it's a very, very good quote. And it's a very, very good quote applied to online learning. So what people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they will not forget how you made them feel. And I think we've got to keep that uppermost when we're working online with our students. We need to make it feel good. And that, of course, is a quote from Maya Angelou. So that's all. Thank you very much. I do have a list of simple activities if anyone's interested in that. And if you want it, then possibly I can share it through Elta. I'm not sure, but you can also write to me. Maybe Valina, I can talk to you about sharing that.
I just wanted to check whether somebody has a question. You can type this in the chat, or you can turn on your mic and ask Frank.
Okay, I'll stop sharing. And
yeah.
So
there was a question about assessing in Zoom. So have you got any tips or ideas to share?
The honest answer is no. I've never actually done assessment in Zoom, but I think, I mean, what I've used for assessment at university is a site called RedMentor, where I've given, like for my language development, I've given language tests, like quizzes. I prefer to call them quizzes, using this site RedMentor. But I think you can do something similar on lots of different sites. Like the university uses Canvas, which you might know. I'll put this in the chat. Canvas is one. Canvas is pretty easy. I like Canvas. And some people use Moodle as well. So both of those, you can do simple quizzes where you've got a choice of questions. The questions I usually use for my students are short answer, gap fill, multiple choice, sometimes true or false, but usually just those to test their language.
Okay, and the last question, Frank, is can you share your presentation with us now, or so that we can download it, or will you share it without and then we can send to people or put it on our site?
Yeah, how would you like me to do that?
I think faster if you can put it here so that we can download it. Okay, so you do go to the file and, but if
on Zoom.
Yeah, here in the chat box, you have a file.
All right, I've got you. Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Sorry, a bit slow. Yeah, I mean, I enjoy teaching online, but I have to say that I am not the most intuitive and I'm not the quickest person to get how things work. But, you know, I'm a good example because even though I'm a bit slow, I get there in the end, and I think anybody can, as long as it goes back to being kind to yourself, I think, and not expecting too much. Okay, just a moment. Yeah, there it is. And that's it. Okay. Yeah. Can you see that?
Okay,
oh, that's to you, right?
Yes,
so, yeah.
just to change it to.
Yeah. I'll change it to everybody and do the same thing.
Okay, so because we are a bit late, 5 minutes late, I just wish to thank everyone for being here, and thank you, Frank, for this lovely and inspiring presentation. Okay, I really enjoyed it, as I usually do. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Marina.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Velina, izvinite, jel mogu da vas pitam samo nešto? Velina, jel me čujete?
Da.
Gordana, imala sam pitanje gore, kako pravite breakout rooms?
Ja sam to razumela. Frank, we are talking about breakout rooms. I thought, Gordana, that you asked about assessment
No.
in
It's
Zoom,
about
okay?
making individual rooms, because I'm not quite sure whether you have to register as an administrator through your provider, for example, institutional account, or because it is impossible. I try to do it through the Zoom application that I have on my computer, but I can't do it.
I think it depends. I'm not really the expert, but I think it depends on the application you've downloaded, okay?
I have the latest one that was on the
But you
site.
have it, if you're a host of a meeting, you have an option here which you can use to create breakout rooms, okay?
Okay. So you don't have to register as
No, you don't have to register.
Okay.
So if you're a host, you can see the option. As a participant, you don't have this option, okay?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, so
Very
thank you
useful.
very much. Goodbye.
Bye.